Coming off a successful season, making the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2004, the Minnesota Timberwolves' vibes couldn't have been any better. But then obviously we all know they make the blockbuster last-second offseason deal with New York to acquire Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, and a deal that sent off the longest tenured Timberwolf in Karl Anthony Towns. And to be honest, I had some doubts about that trade for Minnesota, one being the Randle of it all. And it really felt like the DiVincenzo part of it was like the one part that made sense. But in all reality, this trade was only made because of one reason. And it was Minnesota's want factor to continue to pay Cat that huge contract. And they decided they felt it wasn't worth paying him that much money. And this move was the one that they felt that they could shed money while also maintaining their elite status. But so far early in this season, it's been pretty rough for the Minnesota Timberwolves, coming off a loss to the Houston Rockets in which they were down by basically 20, fought their way back, and then lost in overtime. Kind of similar to the way the Boston game went prior, where they were down by a decent amount and then they came back and lost in regulation though. And now they're going to play the Sacramento Kings later on tonight after this video comes out. And we'll see what happens, but right now they are 8-9, one game below 500. And the trade pieces in particular have been going pretty bad. In Julius Randle's case, now Knicks fans aren't the only one that has experienced the roller coaster that Julius Randle brings to the table, especially with how bad it can get on the defensive end. And Minnesota fans are starting to realize just how low it could go when it comes to Julius Randle's defensive just awareness, intensity, IQ, everything. And then as for Dante DiVincenzo, I'm pretty shocked with how bad he's been because it felt like he'd be like a rock solid piece because his job would pretty much stay the same as it was in New York. But right now, I don't know, maybe he's just not comfortable. Maybe it's going to take some time. But Dante DiVincenzo is currently averaging 9 points a game on 35% shooting, 32% from 3, where last season he had a career year for New York. But to be honest, for me, I'd consider that he might be due for some type of hot streak eventually to even those averages back into the right direction. So I'm not going to say that I'm like fully worried about him yet, but not a great start for his career. I mean, last game versus Houston, he literally basically got benched. It felt like almost the whole second half. I mean, he played a decent amount of the third and then he was done. He didn't see the floor for the fourth quarter or overtime. So that just shows you how bad it's been in his case. But it's not only just been the trade pieces that have struggled. Minnesota as a unit has just been lacking that feel that they had last season, especially on the defensive end. Where last season, that was their bread and butter. It was what made them special. And this season, Minnesota ranks somewhere within the 10 through 15 range as a defensive unit, which isn't horrible, but last season they were at the very top in most categories. And it kind of just feels like the Wolves are a little bit smaller, especially with that front court compared to when they had Cat. And it's been a little rough for them so far. It's not what they are used to with that team. And then on the offensive end, Minnesota continues to just not be where they would hope. Despite the idea that having a better quote-unquote on-ball creator than Cat would do with bringing in Randle and taking pressure off of Edwards, instead they're still kind of where they were last season. They also just lack good enough guard play, in my opinion, for a team that has championship aspirations. Even though I really do like Rob Dillingham, I always liked him coming out of Kentucky, and I thought it was a great selection, or I thought it was a great choice by Minnesota to acquire him on draft night. But he's just a rookie. And at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be consistent enough to lead this team and be the point guard for a team that wants to win a title. I just don't see it yet. And then in the case of Mike Conley, he's currently hurt. I don't know if he'll play against Sacramento or not. I'd have to check the injury report, but last time I checked, he's not on the floor. And he's solid when he does play, but the thing is, he's old, and he's just not a dynamic enough offensive player to uplift Minnesota to a different level on that end of the floor. He's just not. And you look at it, and you look at the stats, I mean, it kind of back it up. This team is still pretty slow. They're one of the lower tier teams when it comes to pace. They don't rack up a bunch of assists. They're still in the bottom part of the league in that category as well. It feels like they just rely on Ant to do a lot of the creating. Randall is getting some of that responsibility, but Randall sometimes can have his moments where he's just not clicking. It's not clicking in his brain, and he will make some mistakes as well. So you don't want to make yourself a low IQ team. You can't call yourself a championship team making those kinds of mistakes, lacking guard play, and not being a defensive team compared to what they were last year. It's just not going to go well. Now, the good news for Minnesota is still relatively early. Still is relatively early. But in the loaded Western Conference, with these new teams coming into the fold, I mean, look at Houston. They are in the top 3 right now. They're a really good team. With these teams like that, even the Spurs, who are decent right now, those teams getting better and better, they have to pick it up soon because the competition is not going to wait around for them to pick it up and become an elite team at their own pace. Anyways, that's going to do it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go check out my previous video on the Boston Celtics on how great they are and why I think they have a really good shot to go back-to-back. This has been the checkup, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.